spherical balloon. What do I mean when I say spherical? It's round, like a ball. Is being inflated, and the radius of the balloon is increasing at a rate of 2 centimeters per second. So part A. Express the radius of the balloon as a function of time. So I'm asking you to write an equation, R of t. Radius as a function of time. Essentially, this just means give me an equation for the radius using t as your variable. So what would it be? Any ideas? So let's kind of think about this for a second. At time 0, before you start inflating this, what is the radius of your balloon? 0. You haven't put any air in it, its radius is 0. Okay, then we are talking about seconds. So 1 second later, I know this radius increases 2 centimeters every second. So after 1 second, the radius would be 2. After 2 seconds, the radius would be 4. It's going up by 2 centimeters every time. So after 3 seconds, my radius would be 6. After 4 seconds, it would be 8. It's just increasing by 2 each time. So, is there an equation I could use involving my t? What do you do to t in order to get r? Take it times 2. Your radius is just 2t. So that means that I don't have to make a table. If I want to know the radius after 20 seconds, I just take 20 times 2. The radius would be 40 centimeters. Okay, B. So this one says, if V is the volume of the balloon as a function of the radius, find V composed with R and interpret it. So first of all, we probably need to know volume of a sphere. I would expect you guys to know basic formulas like area of a triangle, rectangle, circle. Volume of a cube, you should be able to do that. Do I need to jot any of these down? Why don't we? Just kind of make a list of the common formulas that I would expect you to know. So for a circle, area is pi r squared. For a triangle, do you guys remember what area is? For a rectangle, what's your area? Length times width. Volume-wise, you should know a cube, or really, I would say a cube. Let's say a rectangular prism. It's just a box, rectangular box. Volume is length times width times height. Any formulas beyond that, I'm going to give you. So if I put a question on the test about the volume of a sphere, within the question I will say, note volume equals whatever. So, do we have those down? For a sphere, volume is 4/3 pi r cubed. All right, I'm asking you to find V composed with R. So in other words, I'm asking you to find V of R of t. essentially what I am saying is in this formula, replace that R of t. And we already said in part A, R of t was 2t. So then just simplify as much as we can. We have 4/3 pi, 2 to the third is 8, t cubed. We can multiply the numbers. 4/3 times 8 would be 32/3 pi t cubed. So in other words, we found a formula for volume based off time. So if I knew that the balloon had been inflated for 10 seconds, I could automatically calculate the volume of that balloon. So all these word problems that we're looking at today are doing is having you basically compose two things. Are there any questions on that one? I'm just going to keep doing some of these. Right, an airplane is flying at a speed of 350 miles per hour at an altitude of 1 mile and passes directly over a radar station at time t equals 0. What do you think we should do right here? Do you guys know what this scenario looks like? Let's draw a picture and see if we can figure that out. So we have an airplane. I am, you know, an amazing artist. So here is my airplane. So it flies at a speed of 350 miles per hour. So it's flying along at an altitude of 1 mile. What does that mean? Its height. That's how far it is off the ground. So the distance to the ground is 1 mile. And it passes directly over a radar station at time t equals 0. So here's the radar station. We know we're a mile above it. The plane is flying. Okay, part A says, express the horizontal distance d that the plane has flown. So my plane started here at time 0. So the distance it's flown is this right here. That is my d. As a function of time t. Okay. What piece of information was given in the problem that we haven't used yet? Okay, we started here at t equals 0, and we're flying. And how fast are we flying? We go 350 miles per hour. So I want distance as a function of time. So at time 0, my distance is 0. After 1 hour, how far has it flown? 350. After 2 hours, it's flown 700. So what's my formula? 350t. Every hour it flies 350, so just take 350 times our number of hours. Part B. Express the distance s between the plane and the radar station as a function of d. I don't have an s in my picture, but it just told me s is the distance from the plane to the radar station. So the plane started here, but now it's all the way out here. So this is s. What kind of triangle is that? Right triangle. What do you know about right triangles? Pythagorean Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So D squared plus 1 squared equals S squared. We are trying to find a formula for S. So if I wanted to get S by itself, what would we do? Square root. Typically with the square root, you do a plus and minus, but S is a distance here. Can it be negative? No. So S is the square root of D squared plus 1 squared is just 1. So we found a formula for finding that distance. Okay, part C, use composition to express S as a function of t. So I want to take this formula for S and write it so that my variable is a t instead of a d. In other words, replace this d. And we already said that d is 350t. So I'm just asking you to plug that in. So we have the square root 350t squared plus 1. Now you can certainly square 350. Remember I told you on tests in here you're not allowed to have a calculator, so just leave it as 350 squared. Now if it was like 7 squared, go ahead and change that to a 49. You know, if it's a small number you can easily change it, but we don't have to. We can leave it like this. Questions on that one? Are these going okay? Let's take a look at another one. An oil tanker crashed into an iceberg and has developed a leak. The radius of the spill is increasing 15 inches per second and has a constant depth of 1 inch. Part A, express the radius of the spill as a function of time t. Oh, sorry, 1.5. I need to use bigger font. Alright, so what happened is we have this oil spill. What shape is this oil spill taking on as it forms? Circle. Okay, it's probably not in real life a perfect circle, but we have to simplify our problem for it to work. So we're going to pretend it's a perfect circle. So A, I want the radius as a function of time. So I'm looking for an equation for my radius that involves time. What would that be? It increases 1.5 inch every second, so just 1.5 times the number of seconds. B, I want to express volume as a function of t. Okay, so this is circular, but it also has a depth to it, doesn't it? It's not just a flat circle. Three-dimensional. So the shape we're getting is actually kind of like a soup can. You know, if you're looking at the end, it's a circle, but it has some kind of depth to it. So the volume for a cylinder is pi r squared h. It's just essentially the area of the base. So the circle has an area pi r squared times its depth. Times your height. All right. But we know a little bit about this. Is my h changing? Is the height of this or the depth of this changing? No, I already told you the constant depth was 1. So we could change that h to a 1. So our volume is really just pi r squared. So I want volume as a function of T. Means I'm asking you to get rid of this R, but we already said R was 1.5T. So we have pi times 1.5T squared. Again, if it were a test and you were scared you were going to mess up multiplying those, you could leave it like that. You could change it to a fraction. 1.5 is 3 over 2, and that can be squared easily, 9 over 4. You could square it if you know 2.25 pi t squared. I'll accept any of those. Part C, interpret composition. I'm just asking you to tell me, what's this formula telling me? So this is a formula for V. V is volume, so this is the volume of the spill. T is my variable. What's T represent? That's our time in seconds. So this formula would be used to calculate how much oil has been spilled at any given point in time. Do we need more of these? Anybody want one? I have another one if we want it. Nobody wants to say? Looking at your topic E handout that you have, you've been working on for a few days. Is there anything on that handout that you have had trouble with that you would like for me to address right now? Anything you didn't know how to do or you weren't sure about and you want to talk about together? Yes, ma'am. 5A. Okay. So on your homework assignment, 5A, let's go ahead and work it out. It tells us that f of x is the square root of x plus 3. G of x is 4 over x. We want the domain of f times g. Probably the easiest way to do that is just to go ahead and multiply those and see what it looks like. If you take f, square root of x plus 3, times g, that's 4 over x. Not very interesting. That actually doesn't simplify a whole lot. We don't have a lot we can combine. But looking at that, we have two things going on. I have a square root. So if you're talking about the domain of a square root, what do you know? Yep. So the thing underneath, x plus 3 greater than or equal to 0. So that means x is greater than or equal to negative 3. We also have a fraction. If you have a fraction, what do you know? Right. Our denominator, which is x, cannot be 0. So I have to put these two things together. Greater than or equal to negative 3 would look like this. Not equal to 0 is everything bigger than 0 and smaller than 0. You have to give me the overlap, the portion that got shaded by both of those. So that would start at negative 3. It goes to 0. 0 would get a parenthesis. Union picks up again at 0, and they both go forever. So union 0 to infinity. Right, other homework questions. Okay, I don't want to show you all my answers, but problem 8 on the homework. We have to use the graph to find these things. So the first one, oh, I have your board frozen, don't I? F composed with G of 2. So that means X is 2. You start on the inside, so you have to look at the G graph. So when my X is 2, I find the point on graph G. And you want its Y value. So that's a Y value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So now we are finding F of 5. So when X is 5, you want the point on F, and it has a Y value of 4. So your final answer there is 4. Does that make sense? Anything else? Yes, sir. D on which one? 8D, okay. So, 8D, we have G composed with F of 6. So this means we're starting when X is 6, and we're going to plug that into F first. So go to 6, and when you put that in, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we have to do G of 6. So we're going back to when X is 6, and I need graph G, but does graph G exist there? So what do we say? No solution. Anything else? Okay. So you guys have the rest of the time now to work. You've got this handout. If you finish it, you can start your study guide. Ask me questions. If you need help with anything, you can check your answers if you finish.